a decade, Saturdays and Illegal Curve have been synonymous with one another. With insight, analysis, and interviews regarding the Winnipeg Jets, the Manitoba Moose, and all around the NHL, here are Dave Minuk, Ezra Ginsburg, and your host, Drew Mindell. The Illegal Curve Hockey Show starts now.
Good morning, Winnipeg. Good morning, Manitoba. For all those joining us live this morning on our YouTube channel and all of our social media platforms, we say good morning, universe, and welcome to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. With Ezra Ginsburg, I'm your host, Drew Mindell. Dave Minuk off gallivanting around the world this morning, so he will not be joining us. I think we have to start a new segment. Where in the world is Dave Minuk? Modeled after Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego, but that's something that we'll have to discuss in the post-show meeting.
Yeah, like, where is Dave? Is he in Australia? Like, is he in India? Like, he could be in Florida. He could be in California. Like, we have no idea.
No, well, when you have the resources of a Dave Minuk and the private jet is just at your beck and
he's
call.
basically Winnipeg's Elon Musk is what Dave is, right?
That's basically it. I mean, it's the same thing. I mean, there's no difference. He might be orbiting the Earth right now for all we know. Maybe he's up there having checking things out from high above. We used to say high above the ice surface. Maybe he's checking them out from high above the Earth's surface instead of the ice surface today.
Oh, it's probably colder I don't know if you've been outside today, Drew, or if you've checked the weather. The fact that it's March 26th and it's minus 25, like it's not okay. It's just not.
I mean, it's a little chilly. I mean, look, as long as it doesn't snow. I mean, that's my current philosophy. I know that you sometimes can get a cold snap at this late juncture. It's not as of late the last few years we haven't. But, it can happen. It's not unheard of as long as we don't get a snowstorm. If I get a snowstorm, then I'm not going to be able to handle that. That's going to lead to me just curling up in the fetal position and rocking back and forth, which I tend to do most every other night anyway. So, not a big difference. In any event, Ezzy, good to see you on this Saturday morning. I think the two of us can hold down the fort for the next couple hours. What do you say?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this might be a first in Illegal Curve history where we've done 4 straight shows in 4 consecutive days. I don't know. I don't remember us ever doing that. Like, we've done 3 in a row before. Today is the third show in a row.
2 weeks. Yeah, I'm pretty sure we did it like 2 weeks ago.
I don't know if we did 4 in a row. I don't remember that. I probably took maybe one of the shows off. But yeah, we're ready to go. I mean, we've got a win to talk about.
Yeah.
We've got another Jets game coming up tomorrow.
Yeah.
Tons to talk about on this Saturday morning.
Lots to talk about indeed. And it was a good night for the Winnipeg Jets last night at home against the Columbus Blue Jackets. The Jets winning by that 4-3 margin in overtime. They move, within 3 points now, back to within 3 points of the Dallas Stars for that final wild card spot in the Western Conference, 2 points behind the Golden Knights. We know, of course, Dallas with 3 games in hand on the Jets with a game in hand on the Stars, and the Stars with 4 games in hand on the Golden Knights. So Dallas is 100% in the driver's seat. But what I wanted to sort of, we talked about last night's game, and we will in the course of the segment again, but it just goes back to show you how damaging the loss on Thursday night was against the Ottawa Senators. I mean, you can't overstate how bad of a loss that was for this Winnipeg Jets team, because if they had taken care of business against Ottawa on Thursday, you look at the week that was. So they won on Sunday in Chicago. They won on Tuesday against Vegas. They won on Friday against Columbus. But just that one loss against Ottawa did such damage to their playoff hopes that, had they won the game that they were quote unquote supposed to win, which is something you could say really throughout the course of this season, the Jets would currently be a point behind Dallas for that final playoff spot and tied with the Golden Knights right now. Instead, it's one step forward and it's another step back for this Winnipeg Jets team. And I think it was the Jets themselves in their game notes yesterday that, predicted that to be a playoff team in the Western Conference, the Jets were going to have to go something like 15-2-1 over their final 18 games, which, frankly, just isn't going to happen. To get to that sort of 96-point mark.
And that's not just for the Jets, by the way. Most teams can't do that.
Well,
I don't even know if the Florida Panthers or the Colorado Avalanche could do that.
They don't have to worry about doing it, though. That's the difference. The Jets need to do it when, trying to somehow figure out a way to do it. But I thought there was a stat on last night's broadcast, Ezzy, that I think it said that Vegas, in terms of their remainder of their schedule and in terms of the opponents they play, they have the weakest schedule in the entire NHL for the remainder of the year, in the sense of that all their teams, the teams they're playing.
You're talking about Dallas, not Vegas.
I thought it was Vegas who had the 32nd strength of schedule left in the regular season.
Could be. You know what? I've been so focused on Dallas, Drew, because the Stars. It's possible we'll maybe bring it up.
I think Dallas's was pretty easy as well, but I think Vegas's was the absolute easiest of them all. Look, if Dallas doesn't get the playoff spot, if Dallas doesn't get the final playoff spot, then they have absolutely blown a golden opportunity. Pardon the pun. Because they have those 4 games in hand on Vegas. They have a lead on Vegas. Hell, the Stars are only 3 points behind Nashville, and they have 2 games in hand on the Predators. So Dallas is absolutely in their driver's seat. All they have to do is win the games they should win, and they will be a playoff team at the end of the regular season.
It's a good point that you make about Nashville, Drew, because there's a big incentive. We know what the incentive is to get that first wild card spot. It's avoiding playing Colorado, right? Yeah. So that Dallas is not only motivated to make the playoffs, but they can still catch Nashville. They're within reach. So I haven't looked at Vegas's schedule. I'll pull that up maybe at some point in the show. But I know just going over the Stars' next 6 games, they're all against non-playoff teams, right? So you've got Vancouver tonight at home, then you've got the Ducks a couple times, and then I'll pull it up here, Drew. Then you've got San Jose, Seattle, the Islanders, and then you've got the Leafs. That's the one playoff team. But then you've got the Devils, you've got the Hawks. You've got another game against the Kraken. You've got the Coyotes and the Ducks to end the season. So I don't know how easy the Vegas schedule is. I'll take your word for it. But the Dallas schedule, isn't very easy. And we talked about the Jets schedule. Like, of the remaining 16 games, this is the part of the schedule that's easy, right? You've got Ottawa, you've got Columbus, you've got Arizona, you've got Buffalo. We talked about you've got some tough games, to end the season
coming up. You have Detroit coming up in the next week or so. But I mean, you look at that 4-game road trip that they have in April. You look at the end of. They got Colorado, I think, still twice. You have Florida, Tampa, Carolina, another game against the Rangers. I mean, you got Calgary. I mean, it is the Jets' schedule for the remainder, after Sunday against Arizona and then Wednesday against Buffalo, it's a murderer's row, basically. I mean, that's what makes it even more difficult. The Jets are all clearly behind the 8 ball, in terms of the playoff positioning as it stands, no matter who they were playing. But then you look at the teams they're playing against, it makes it that much more difficult.
Yeah, absolutely. Sorry, I was on a couple browsers here trying to bring up the Jets schedule and the Golden Knights schedule and everything like that. But going back to what you said, Drew, about the game on Thursday night, I think you could also go back 8 days and look at that game against Boston. And the Bruins are a good team. We knew that game, wasn't going to be easy for the Jets, but that was a game. It was tied, and then obviously Boston scores late. We remember, what happened in that game. So, there's that game that they failed to get a point. And then there's the game a couple nights ago against Ottawa. So, I mean, the Jets could either be a point behind the Stars or a point ahead of the Stars. So that's why, you mentioned,
opportunities.
Well, and that's why when you talk about, the Jets might have to win 13, 14, whatever games, 15 games of their 16 games remaining, like that's just not going to happen. So they're going to need to get some help. Yeah. But I mean, it's going to be extremely difficult. And we're not going to say that they're out of it because, we thought a couple of weeks ago they were out of it, but Dallas and Vegas, they let the Jets back in it, right? So, I mean, all you can do is win the game in front of you. Luckily, they've got one of the worst teams in the league. They might actually be 32nd. I'm not sure if it's Montreal or Seattle or Arizona. All these teams are awful. The Coyotes, I know, have lost 4 games in a row. They lost again last night to the Calgary Flames. So,
Montreal's still the worst. The Jets do have another game against Montreal. And so actually Arizona and Montreal are tied with 44 points. So they're tied for 31st in the.
Remember what I said at the beginning of the year, right? I said I'd be surprised if the Coyotes had, I think I predicted they'd have 50 points. So they're probably going to be right around 50 points, right? They might get, 52, 53 or something like that, but they won't be much higher. So luckily, you've got some crappy teams coming up. but you have to take care of business. So yeah, I mean, I don't know how much time we can spend, talking about that Jets Senators game. I really don't think a lot of Jets fans want to, look back at that again, because yeah, it was just inexcusable to lose to a team not only that's below you in the standings, but they've traded some players away. You didn't have Thomas Chabot in the lineup, so all the Jets can do is string together some wins. These next two are obviously must-win games, but even against Toronto, you're going up against a team that's better than you, but you can't just win at this point. Even 2 of 3 is not going to cut it.
Well, and this is a team that hasn't been able to string together 3 wins in a row, basically for the majority of the season. That has been their bugaboo
since January.
The fact that they can't win 3 in a row, and especially when it's that 3rd win in a row is sitting there teed up for you against a team like the Ottawa Senators, and you come out and you lay the egg that the Jets did on Thursday night, just goes to show you about the inconsistency that has been the hallmark of this team this season. And that's certainly going to be a running thread throughout the remainder of the season, and certainly into the off season, where changes seem like they will be aplenty for this Winnipeg Jets team, particularly so, as it relates to the coaching staff and maybe the front office. Craig Button is going to join us in hour number 2. He had some very interesting comments where he laid the blame for the Jets' struggles in their own zone directly on the coaching staff. We'll play those comments for you at the top of the second hour, and we'll talk about that. And then Craig is going to join us at the bottom of the second hour to expand on his opinion there, so you can stay tuned to that. We say good morning to everybody. If you haven't already done so, please smash the like button. Gently tap the like button either way. Do so. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Thank you to everybody. We have now hit 4,000 subscribers on YouTube, which we
hit for. It's funny, if you go to YouTube now, it's 3.99 thousand. So we hit 4,000, and then somebody unsubscribed.
No.
Which I actually. Oh, what happened?
It's not. So I think the way it works, Ezzy, is that if you look at the actual YouTube channel itself, I think only updates every X number of days. But if you go in behind the scenes to the user menu or whatever,
you've got the backdoor portal.
I got the backdoor portal, exactly. You can see that it's reached the magic 4,000 mark. So as I was saying, we thank everybody.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's regardless. That's awesome. Thank you for everybody who subscribed. Obviously, the YouTube channel is not something we really used back in the day when we were on the terrestrial airwaves of TSN 1290, but we appreciate. I mean, 1,000 of those 4,000 subscribers are my fake burner Gmail accounts, but for the other 3,000 people, we appreciate it.
Yes, and those, I mean, the fact you were able to, dedicate the time and effort, that's actually what Ezzy's been doing when he's missed all those post-game shows. He's been just generating fake YouTube accounts.
It's tough to create fake names. Like, I can easily create, like 5, 10, 15 fake names, but then once you get into like 100, 200 names, it gets tiring. So,
well, look, like this is obviously a made-up person. You are clearly pixelated frames. There's no question about it that can't be a real person. That's just you under a pseudonym. Totally understand. Appreciate the support. Anyways, just kidding, pixelated frames. Love you for being here on a regular basis on this Saturday morning. And there you go. James Robinson saying he subscribed twice. We appreciate it, everybody. Thank you for that.
Boy, James.
What I want to get into now, Ezzy, is there's going to be some line shuffling for the Winnipeg Jets. There was some line shuffling entering last night's game, and now Jansen Harkins left the game early, came back, tried to play through what looked like an arm, like a hyperextension of the arm.
Shoulder,
I'm not a doctor.
maybe.
I only play one on YouTube. I wouldn't expect to see him on Sunday afternoon against the Coyotes. So let me ask you the first question, starting with
Isn't it a 7 o'clock start?
6 o'clock. 6 o'clock tomorrow.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's not afternoon.
Early evening, late afternoon, call whatever you like, dinner time. I mean, I don't know. It's 6 o'clock. You got to be, I'll tell you what, the only thing you got to know is that you got to be here at 8:45 p.m. tomorrow night for the post-game show.
And I will be.
That's the same with everybody as well. With everybody else.
If I'm anything, Drew, I'm punctual.
You are, well, I mean, except for last week where you got the car stuck in the back lane a couple times and you had to push out. And
I was a little late for that Jets game.
To get to the game, and then you got stuck again. I meant to ask you.
I do have a new car battery. Shout out to Academy Road Service, Bruce and Ian. I took my car in. I've been taking my car to Academy Road Service. They're great people there. So I finally got the new car battery.
Well, that's great. I'm thrilled for you on that front. I meant to ask you, when you got the car stuck the second time in the back lane, after picking up your McDonald's and you were waiting for Dave and his significant other to come and help extricate you from that situation. Did you eat the Junior McChickens while you were waiting for them in the car?
I think you know the answer to that, Drew. You've known me for 20 plus years. You know that those Junior McChickens had no chance. What ended up happening was my car got stuck. I tried to do the Manitoba rock back. Anybody that you know is from Manitoba or you know the prairies, Saskatchewan knows what that is. You try to reverse and you just try to do anything, but really the car's not going anywhere. So it's really the Manitoba rock nothing. So I went inside and ate the Junior McChickens. I put the McFlurry in the freezer.
The house.
Yeah. Well, because originally what happened was I called CAA.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure I have CAA has me on speed dial because I've used them so many times this year. But it was taking too long. So then I just texted Dave M and him and Sylvia came and helped me that we shoveled out and everything like that. But I actually got stuck a third time. I don't think I even told you about that.
You did
I
not
got stuck 3 times. So I was out there chipping the ice. Luckily, it started to melt and the city's coming back. But I think people have had enough of that. They want us to talk about hockey, Drew, because even though I think you know people want to hear about my Nissan Sentra getting stuck in the ice in my back lane, I think they'd rather hear us talk about the Dubois, Connor, and Wheeler line.
So that was going to lead to my question. With Harkins, I'm assuming not an option for tomorrow night, and I very well could be wrong. Does Adam Brooks get another chance in the Jets lineup, or
probably?
Do you think? I mean, have you seen anything from him that says to you that the Jets shouldn't be looking to call up somebody like David Gustafson instead of constantly sort of putting Brooks in the lineup and playing him for 4 minutes a game, where it's the most almost insignificant 4 minutes? And I know he's a good local story, and I know that it would be great to see him succeed, but there's been no evidence that he's going to be able to contribute to the Winnipeg Jets. There really hasn't been any evidence as he's bounced from team to team to team to team to team to team around the NHL that he's going to that he's going to contribute at the NHL level.
Well, I'll say this much. I mean, how much can you contribute when you're only playing 3 or 4 minutes?
That's a chicken and the egg situation,
right? Exactly. Sure. It is chicken and egg. So Adam Brooks, he has a lot of talent. He hasn't played a ton at the NHL level. He's mainly been an AHL player, but you look at, he put up really good numbers with the Toronto Marlies. He was one of their top offensive players. So could the Jets call someone up? Possibly, I guess. I just don't know. I'm not trying to cop out here, Drew. But, the Moose are on the road. They've got, I believe, just the last game on the road trip is it Iowa or Rockford?
No, they're in Rockford. And I think I saw Genghis Ken earlier in the chat. Genghis is a big Jets fan who lives in the Chicago area. He said that he's going to be at the Moose game in Rockford. So there you go. So, yes, the Genghis, take a photo for us and send it to us.
Boy, Genghis. I'm pretty sure Genghis bought some IC merchandise as well.
I'm pretty sure he did as well.
So he's repping IC in Chicago, one of the best cities in North America.
There you go. IC merchandise still available. Go to our website, illegalcurve.com. You can look like me dressing in these fancy Illegal Curve fashions as he's decked out.
You want to look like me. This is what you want to look like.
Yeah.
I look like a guy from River Heights.
That's what somebody said that's what somebody called Murat on Twitter. Somebody said he looks like a guy
from River Heights. Does Murat even live in River Heights?
I don't believe so.
Okay.
I'm not really sure where Murat lives, but it was a good comment. It was funny nonetheless.
Yeah, I'm not really sure what somebody in River Heights looks like. Like, if it was me, it would be, a fat guy in sweatpants and rain boots who has his car stuck in the back lane.
Well, maybe it depends maybe it's on a back lane by back lane basis. I don't really know.
Yeah.
In any event, so, and I think you're probably right that it's probably Brooks coming back into the lineup, but it just seems like to me, a fourth line with Brooks, Tony Nato, and Svechnikov, Dave Lowry's not going to have any faith in that line. And,
I would agree with that.
If you know before the game that you don't have any faith in your fourth line or in certain players, it's almost like you're starting the game with, one hand a little bit tied behind your back. And so if I'm the Jets, and I mean, look, you're in a situation now where the salary cap, there's no roster limits anymore. The Jets, I believe, should have the salary cap space to be able to call up, somebody like David Gustafson if they wanted to do that. Maybe they don't actually. If you look at their,
you also have emergency recalls, right? You have a certain amount of emergency recalls.
That's
what is
true.
it, 3 or 4?
Yeah, you have emergency recalls you could use. That's a good point, Ezzy. I mean, it just seems like
Well, actually, I don't think I've ever, in the 13 years of doing the show, I don't think you've ever said that. Nice point, Ezzy.
it just seems like just popping Brooks in there, you know, I just don't know what it solves. I don't know.
Well, unless they call someone up, Drew, I don't think they have any forwards.
They don't have any other
So that's
options.
the only forward. So like you said, I mean, who are you calling up? Like we talked about, the Moose lost in overtime yesterday. Like it's kind of the usual, cast of characters. You could call up Christian Vesalainen. You could call up Austin Pagansky. Mikey Esimon's played really well. Jeff Malott just played. But again, it goes back to what I said to answer your question or kind of address, what you brought up here. Jeff Malott played his first NHL game, but again, what did he play? 3.5 minutes? So it goes back to what we've talked about for 3 or 4 years now, going back to when Paul Maurice was the head coach. You got to play your fourth line. And look at what Dominic Toninato did yesterday. Goal and an assist. He played really well. Really good on the penalty kill alongside Kyle Connor. So, I mean, I don't think that the drop-off is going to be that significant. All I would say is I like Adam Brooks, good Winnipeg boy. I like that, the Jets brought in a Winnipegger. So, look, is he going to have a huge impact in the game? Well, if it's against the Coyotes, there's much more of a chance he'll have an impact because you would think the fourth line would play more, right, Drew? So that's what I'm saying. Like, if it's the Jets versus the Golden Knights, that the fourth line is most likely going to play 5 minutes, 6 minutes, depending on power plays and everything like that. So my best guess would be Brooks goes in, but I think it also depends on how severe is this injury to Jansen Harkins. Because if Harkins is going to be out for a week or 2 weeks, I would be shocked if the Jets didn't call someone up from the Moose.
Well, yeah, I would probably agree with that assessment. And the problem, not the problem, but the reality is the Moose play again. They played last night. They play again today. You're not going to call somebody up. Unless you don't play one of those Moose players tonight in Rockford, you're not going to call somebody up and put him into the Jets lineup for his third game in 3 nights at any level. It's just not something that's going to happen. But just simply because it's too much hockey and it's too much of a strain on whomever would get called up.
I would imagine the Jets do call up a forward, and then we'll see what happens. But if I had to, place a bet with Betway, one of our sponsors, I would say that the Jets call somebody up from the Moose, but Adam Brooks
could also try out. There's also the possibility, you can float this. Do they want to go with an 11-7? Vili Heinola.
They traded Nate Beaulieu though, Drew. They can't do that.
Well, they do. They have Vili Heinola. They can maybe use the young prospect who's been languishing in the press box for weeks on end now, trying to get into the lineup. But
I told you last night, Drew, sorry to cut you off. I told you last night on the postgame show, I think regardless of if the Jets go 11-7 or if Adam Brooks plays or if somebody else plays, I think Vili Heinola should go into the lineup. And not just for tomorrow's game. Like I think Heinola should, go get at least, 3 or 4 games in a row.
It's you wonder what they're doing to his long-term future and his long-term prospects by being half pregnant with him.
I don't think you can be half pregnant.
Well, that's the point. You can't be, but that's what the Jets are trying to be when it comes to Vili Heinola. And are they hurting him? And are they hurting his trajectory moving forward? And I'm firmly of the opinion, they probably are. And so, we'll ask Mike McIntyre about it in about 5 minutes when he joins us. But it's, you either got to play him or at the AHL level or play him at the NHL level. But this press box routine just isn't doing anybody any good, especially a player who needs NHL experience to truly see what he brings. There's nothing left for him at the AHL level, which we've talked about ad nauseum.
Well,
and they're not even using him at the AHL level. So it's like, what are you doing?
Going on a long Calder Cup run is kind of, all that's left for Vili Heinola, because next year, and that's a conversation for the off season, but next year, Vili Heinola has to be playing in your top 6, right? Because he's a first round pick from 2019. You've invested a lot in him. He's a guy that can skate. He's got great hockey sense. Like we had Scott Wheeler on the show. What was that? A month ago, 6 weeks ago, 2 months ago, something like that, talking about Vili Heinola, and he was talking about how his game has improved at the professional level for a smaller defenseman, right? Because that's always the knock on a small puck-moving defenseman is, okay, are they going to get pushed around in front of the net, everything like that, right? Mm-hmm. So I agree with you, Drew. He's got to play now, and what they're doing with him right now, you don't want a guy like Vili Heinola as your 7th defenseman. That's why in that sense, Nate Beaulieu was that perfect defenseman. He might not be a replacement level defenseman. He's actually below replacement level, but you don't want Vili Heinola, sitting in the press box night after night, and that's what he's doing right now. So I would put him in starting tomorrow against Arizona. But obviously, I'm not the coach. Big Dave Lowry is.
Yeah, not the coach yet, is he? Who knows what the offseason is going to bring. What did you think of the forward lines last night? Because it was a mix. This is, we saw, everyone thought that Dubois, Connor, and Ehlers should be together, moving forward on a long-term basis because they seem to be so dynamic. But Dave Lowry mixed things up last night. Connor Dubois with Wheeler, Stastny, Scheifele, and Ehlers. Adam Lowry returning to the Jets lineup. He played with Sanford and Appleton. And then, of course, the fourth line had Tony Nato and Svechnikov before, and Jansen Harkins, of course, before he left the game injured. So, especially the top six of the Jets, what did you think of those forward lines?
Sorry, Drew. I think it was a little bit mixed in terms of, what I thought. I mean, I actually thought, Blake Wheeler had a pretty solid game. We talked about, the power play. He's obviously a focal point of that power play, distributing the puck. But, I personally would go back to Scheifele, Wheeler, and Stastny, and then go back to Dubois, Connor, and Svechnikov. I just think.
What about Ehlers?
Well, that's the issue that the Jets have now that, Andrew Kopp is gone, and then you've got Paul Stastny sometimes playing center, sometimes playing wing, right? Like, look, it's a good question because then, where does Ehlers fit in? He was playing with Scheifele and Stastny. Like, I don't know. Do you maybe move, Zach Sanford down to the fourth line, and then maybe have a third line of Lowry, Appleton, and Ehlers? Like, I don't know. That's kind of a mismatch. I don't know. I mean, I honestly don't know, Drew, right now, because look at the last couple of games. I mean, we know the game against Ottawa was a disaster. Yesterday's game was not a Picasso. I mean, the Jets deserve to win the game. Don't get me wrong. I talked about it a lot. We don't have to rehash that. I mean, the Blue Jackets should not have got a point in that game. We know what happened at the end with that just terrible call. Let's just leave it at that. Terrible call on Josh Morrissey, which led to the tying goal from the Blue Jackets. So, I mean, we know Connor and Dubois as a pair are going to stay together. I don't know. I mean, I would probably actually put Ehlers back on that top line. Now that I think about it, I was getting a little bit excited and I forgot about Ehlers. I would put Ehlers back on that top line and then go back to Scheifele, Stastny, and Wheeler.
Well, I mean, I would put, Ehlers has to be in your top six. Stastny, a third line with Stastny, Lowry, and Appleton, to me, makes a lot of sense. Look, Zach Sanford was a fourth line player for Ottawa. I think he was an effective fourth line player. I'm not sure why he automatically gets third line minutes on the Winnipeg Jets. Doesn't your fourth line look better with a guy like Sanford on it? Sanford, Tony Nato, and
that's what I was saying, right? That makes your and then you really have a sandpaper gritty type of fourth line, right? Like Tony Nato is a guy, even though he's smaller, like he can muck it up and he can contribute a little bit offensively. We talked about that 2 points yesterday against the Blue Jackets, right? So yeah, I mean. And then, Svechnikov goes, it's a little bit of musical chairs here. And that's the thing. Like, I thank God I'm not the coach now that I think about it, because, a guy like
players you have on the team.
Well, no, but like a guy like Harkins goes out and, then all of a sudden it complicates things, right? Because I don't think Adam Brooks is going to play on the third line if he goes in. So Adam Brooks is most likely going to go on the fourth line. Tony Nato is not moving off of that fourth line. But what do you do with Svechnikov, right? Like Svechnikov always plays the best when he's with Connor and Dubois. And wow, that should be a surprise considering Connor and Dubois are the two best forwards on the Jets, right? Or two of the best forwards on the Jets, right? So, yeah, I would have no problem with moving Sanford down. And then, I guess you were saying it would be Lowry, Appleton, and Stastny as your third line. I'd have no problem with that.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense to me. It'll be interesting. The Jets are off completely today. They'll be back on the ice for, I assume, a game day skate tomorrow. And then we'll find out more information about what the roster and what the lineup is going to look like. And we'll have all the latest for you on our Twitter feed at Illegal Curve and on our website, illegalcurve.com. Let's head to break. When we come back, Mike McIntyre of the Winnipeg Free Press is going to join us. Much more Jets talk all throughout the next 90 minutes. Stay with us. Don't go anywhere. Smash the like button while you're waiting. Ezra Ginsburg, Drew Mindell, we're the Illegal Curve Hockey Show live on YouTube on this Saturday morning.
Keeping Winnipeg laughing for over 30 years. Rumors, Canada's longest-running comedy club, bringing you the biggest laughs from the best comedians on the planet. Jerry Seinfeld, Chris Rock, Jon Stewart, Dennis Miller, Brad Garrett, the greats, and all the up-and-comers too. When was the last time you laughed out loud? Make it a great night out with friends, or book your office or birthday party. Even a fundraising event at Rumors. Get all the details and dates on upcoming shows at rumorscomedyclub.com.
Hi, Ez. A strange question for you. But why are you lying on the ground being crushed by a piano?
Well, Drew, I definitely tried to carry this baby grand piano down the stairs by myself, and somehow I failed miserably.
Right. Yeah, sorry. That was a silly question on my part. My apologies. Would you like me to call Rolly's Transfer Moving and Storage to help you move the piano? They are the most experienced piano moving company in Winnipeg, after all.
Yes, please call Rollies and hurry. This piano is very, very heavy.
Rollies Transfer Moving and Storage offers stress-free residential moving services while taking great care of your personal belongings, including your piano. At Rollies, no job is too big or too small. For more information, visit rollies.com.
Hi, it's Drew from Illegal Curve here. Selling your home can be stressful, but it wasn't for me. Thanks to my friends at Zappia Group Realty, they made the process so easy. My home sold within 48 hours and with multiple offers. Zappia Group Realty took care of everything with their exquisite customer service and attention to detail. If you want to sell your home for more in less time, get started by talking to Frank and Mauro Zappia of Zappia Group Realty. Online at zappiagroup.com.
Hey, it's Aaron from Bernstein's Deli.
That's right, Ezzy. I'm the guy who makes all your sandwich dreams come true.
So when you think Illegal Curve, what comes to you?
How about juicy chicken schnitzel, grilled salami, fried onions, melted cheddar cheese, and honey mustard on toasted, thick-cut city rye bread?
Man, that's like the holy grail of sandwiches.
And so it shall be known as the Illegal Curve sandwich.
The Illegal Curve sandwich. Try it today at Bernstein's Deli. Find us at Corridon and Lanark or online at bernsteinsdeli.com.
Hey, Drew.
Ezzy, whoa, what a smile!
Yeah, I got my crowns done at Linden Market Dental Center, and they whitened my teeth.
I see.
They're so bright that every time I smile, they go,
We have hockey tonight. Do you have a mouth guard to protect those pearly whites?
I sure do.
Whoa, they even ting through the mouth guard.
Linden Market Dental Center covers all your dental needs from restorative to cosmetic dentistry and will fit you with a sports guard for that active lifestyle. 877 Waverly. See lindenmarketdental.com.
So you're a pizza person, you married a wing person, but somehow your kids are salad people. You can't pick your fam, but you can pick your BP meal deal, starting from $18.99 for takeout or delivery at bostonpizza.com.
Bottom of hour number one, we're pleased to welcome back to the program our very good friend from the Winnipeg Free Press, columnist extraordinaire, journalist extraordinaire, Mike McIntyre joins us on the show. Mike, good morning. Thanks so much for doing this. How are things?
Hey, things are pretty good, guys. Busy stretch, busy week. The week just flew by. Pre-deadline, 15 Jets games, it seems.
You're right. That's exactly what it feels like. I guess
the week flew by, but it actually got colder, and it's minus 25. We're back to like mid-February again, Mike.
Yeah, we're going backwards in time. That was a great spring we had. 2 really nice days, and I guess that's it, right?
Well, much like the Winnipeg Jets, 1 step forward, 2 steps back as it pertains to the weather. Same thing as it pertains to the Winnipeg Jets and their playoff chances, Mike. We'll obviously get into the games this week and where this team is going to go from there. First, I want to start with sort of the vibe last night. Obviously, it's the return of Laine. He's the headliner. The return of Pascal Vincent. The return of Jack Roslovic. To me, and admittedly, I wasn't in the building, I thought there was almost a bit of a strange vibe to the acknowledgments and the recognition side of things. Now, I don't expect that they're gonna, go ticker tape parade when a guy comes back, but to give sort of Laine and Vincent especially, and Jack Roslovic obviously left on worse terms, right. But to give them the sort of the same acknowledgement that you give Derek Forbort a week earlier, to me struck me as a little bit odd. You were in the building, presumably. What did you sort of take from the whole atmosphere last night, let's say?
Yeah, I agree with you, Drew. And in my column today, I actually made note of that I frankly was a bit surprised that there wasn't more done by the team to kind of pay tribute to a guy that, for his 4 full years in Winnipeg, he was an absolute superstar. He was, he was on a level that very few get to. And you're right, to kind of lump him in with, the same welcome back that we kind of saw Forbert and Matthew Perreault and others who've kind of come and gone through here. It did seem odd. I get that, they were trying to obviously not exclude anyone, but I thought that they would have done more. And, frankly, I thought he was going to be given a hero's welcome back in Winnipeg. But I suppose if we break it down, maybe we shouldn't be all that surprised. I wrote today that there's a lot of this story that we still don't totally know about Laine and the Jets and kind of what happened behind the scenes. And, he's the kind of player teams normally would want to build around, not be looking to get rid of. And yet the Jets traded him well before he had his prime. And, it's clear just from some of what Patrik Laine said yesterday and some of what Patrick that there is more to this story and it's not a story that I guess the parties necessarily want to talk about, but maybe this is just kind of the way this was going to end. It was inevitable given how their relationship kind of went south and ended. It's unfortunate, really, and I think it's unfortunate that there wasn't maybe more done by the team. And even to hear some boo birds yesterday, granted, I think the majority of people cheered Laine, certainly, and when the game started and the first time he was shown, during the anthems and, first time he touched the puck. But there were some boos, which I think speaks to the fact that this isn't all black and white. And there are certainly people out there who feel that Laine deserves his fair share of blame for kind of what went wrong in Winnipeg.
Yeah, fair enough, Mike. I agree with you 100% that there's for sure more to this story, and it's kind of just over a year later. It actually is. Maybe it's because of everything that went on with Dustin Byfuglien and Jacob Trouba being traded. Maybe here in Winnipeg we're just used to big things happening with this Jets team, but it is still amazing if you think about that. That was one of the biggest I guess call it a 1-for-2 trade. It wasn't a 1-for-1 trade like, Seth Jones for Ryan Johansson or, Weber for Subban, but it really was a massive trade. And when you really think about it, it's pretty amazing that did happen and everything came together, which allowed them to trade, with their disgruntled player in Pierre-Luc Dubois. But right. I wanted to ask you we were talking about this right before you came on, Mike. Jansen Harkins, he tried to come back yesterday. We're not sure exactly what the injury is. We know it's an upper body injury. Like, do you see the Jets with the Moose in Rockford tonight? It complicates things a little bit, but do you see the Jets calling up someone is in your opinion, do you just plug in Adam Brooks onto that fourth line? And overall, kind of what do you think of the Jets forward lines? Because I think you would probably say that the kind of mixed reviews based on, the last couple games.
Yeah, I actually liked the fourth line last night. I thought that line with Toninato and Harkins and Svechnikov, had some really nice shifts. They obviously Toninato gets the early goal there, and it's unfortunate for Jansen Harkins. Frankly, Ezzy, I was shocked that he came back for a shift because, watching his reaction more than anything to the injury suggested that he knew it was pretty bad. So to see him then come out early in the second period, take a shift, and he actually handled the puck because, it appears to be an arm or an elbow issue. But obviously whatever, he had to do to get out for that shift, he couldn't repeat. And, but so maybe there's at least a positive in that he was able to test it. Maybe it's not as serious as we first thought. I think Adam Brooks goes in tomorrow for sure. And perhaps, they would need to add a forward if Jansen Harkins is out for any length. Maybe he just meets them in Buffalo, goes from Rockford to Buffalo and meets the team there later in the week when they go on this quick 2-game road trip. A guy like David Gustafsson would make a lot of sense. I think he's a guy that a lot of us, quite frankly, have kind of wanted to see back up with the Moose, on a regular basis. Adam Brooks, he's been given some opportunity, and I think we would probably mostly agree he hasn't really done a lot with that opportunity. Granted, he's not playing a lot of minutes. He had that one game, his very first game, when he was put with Dubois and Connor, golden opportunity. But again, he was coming off an injury that had cost him like over a month. And I think he's talked about how, he struggled in that game. But yeah, I mean, there's some options, right? And I think we look at the fact they do have one extra defenseman in Vili Heinola here. I guess Dave Lowry could always go 11-7. He doesn't play his fourth line anyways. You might as well not even dress the four. And that would be a way to get Vili into a game, which I think is desperately needed. I tweeted last night before the game just the number of games that Vili has played in his 4 seasons in last 4 years, and that number is going down, and that's not what you want to be doing with a young player. And that I'm talking all levels of hockey, whether it was overseas in Finland, the World Juniors, the AHL, and the NHL. He's only played 40 total games this year, and we're almost into April. That's not enough. And so to me, they got to get him either in the lineup with the Jets, and I thought Logan Stanley really struggled last night, so there's a chance. But if Dave Lowry doesn't want to put him in the lineup, get him down to the Moose, get somebody else up here, to sit in the press box and eat popcorn.
Indeed. Mike McIntyre, our guest Saturday morning, we were watching the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. We're live on YouTube. We're live on all of our social media platforms. I was going to ask you just about that, Mike, about the usage of Vili Heinola, and you factor in the struggles lately of Logan Stanley, yet the Jets seem so reticent to make a move that could benefit both guys. It's not that it's Logan Stanley, when you're just in the mud that he appears to be in, could benefit from just watching and getting the sort of the weight taken off of his shoulder. And for a team that's all about draft and develop, and I know it's an obnoxious cliche at this point in time, they're drafting, but it seems to be the developing as of late that's really sort of hindering some of these Winnipeg Jets players. When was the last guy who really, came right through the organization and made that impact? Spent some time at the AHL and climbed their way through the ranks. I mean, Kyle Connor's probably the last guy. Jack Roslovic, had an opportunity and then it never worked out in Winnipeg. I mean, Mason Appleton, sure. I guess jury's still out a little bit on that now that they've reacquired
Jansen
him.
Harkins, Drew. We were just talking about him. Yeah,
sure. But Jansen Harkins, but I'm talking about really get Vili Heinola was a first round pick. And it seems like they've stunted his development with how they've used and not used him over the last couple seasons. Your thoughts sort of related to that.
And I mean, another guy that just got sent back to the Moose last week was Christian Vesalainen, right? And I'll absolve the Jets of some blame there. I think Christian Vesalainen probably stunted his development a bit as well in kind of going all over the map the way he did and not, not sticking in the A that season. It's all a blur. I think that was 2 years ago, but whenever it was that he went, exercised the clause in his contract, I think he would have really benefited from that full season with the Moose. And unfortunately that didn't happen. I mean, it's just, Paul Maurice used to say it all the time, right? I don't want a young guy to just sit. And I get that there's some value to having Vili around, the NHL club but I would say that that's in certain doses, right? Like it's great that he gets to practice with the big club. And, he gets to work with the coaches and they get to see him up close. So that's great. He's just done so much of that. I think at some point you got to play some games, right? Like that's where you really learn, what you can and cannot do. And I just feel like we've kind of hit a point now where it feels like they've got to make a decision here, one way or the other. And, if for whatever reason Dave Lowry feels like he can't trust him to, whether it's in a platoon situation with Logan Stanley, which I agree, Drew. I mean, I think there might be some benefit both to Logan and Vili, where maybe you rotate them. And look, it'd be a different story if the Jets were a legitimate Stanley Cup contender this year, and what they had in the lineup was going so well that you just you wouldn't touch it unless there was injury.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's not the case. We know they're trying to do a lot of things here. We just saw that at the trade deadline, right? They're trying to take care of the future, which is why they traded Andrew Kopp, but they're also trying to manage the present, which is why they brought, a guy like Zach Sanford, why they traded a draft pick for a pending UFA.
Mm-hmm.
And brought Mason Appleton. Granted, there's another year at least of control there. But so they're trying to kind of be a lot of things at once. But I just don't see that with Vili Heinola. I just see them, as you say, they're just parking him in the press box. And I think ultimately he's not benefiting from that. So I'm curious that they're not practicing today with having played back-to-back. So we won't get an idea, I guess, till morning skate tomorrow. I am curious, though, if Logan Stanley, and I'm sure Dave Lowry saw it as well as we all did. He had a couple really rough shifts, one that, led directly to a goal. And he didn't play a lot after kind of that second big oopsie that he had later in the game. So, to me, there is a golden opportunity now. And I would say if Vili is not in the lineup tomorrow, either as a seventh defenseman that they dress because of Harkins or in place of Logan Stanley, then I would hope that on Monday, before they head out on the road, they do some kind of swap and get him back with the Moose just so he can get in some games.
Yeah, sorry, Mike, I had to unmute myself there. I agree with you 100% there. And
I left you speechless.
Exactly. You left me speechless. All those great insights. No,
yeah.
We have to talk a little bit about Eric Comrie. We did our post-game show, of course, last night. We talked about Comrie a little bit, but he didn't have to be excellent. He just had to be good last night. The Blue Jackets, I think you'd agree, were lucky to get a point out of that game, right? If it wasn't for that crappy penalty call at the end by Kelly Sutherland. But I think, Eric Comrie needs to be talked about more, right? Like, he improves his record to 8-2-1. He's won 5 of his last games. He's got a .920 save percentage on the season. Like, we know he's going to play one of these games, most likely coming up against Buffalo and Toronto. I think it's kind of tough to figure out which game he'll get. He might get the Buffalo game as opposed to the second half of the back-to-back, just because, of course, Toronto's a much better team. Yeah. But did last night's performance change anything? Like, you continue to watch Eric Comrie, and for all of those doubters at the beginning of the season who thought, the backup position was going to be a weakness for the Jets in a year in which it's been obviously a disappointing year, and, the Jets are going to be in tough to make the playoffs. Comrie, along with others, Kyle Connor, Pierre-Luc Dubois, Josh Morrissey, there's a lot of, good stories on the Jets, but Comrie's got to be right up there. He just continues to just be very solid, in that backup role.
Yeah, he started 5 games now in the calendar year of 2022, and he's won them all. Like, all he does is win, right? And it does beg the question, why isn't he playing a little bit more? I think the numbers now, the Jets have played 66 games, and Hellebuck started 55, and Comrie has started 11. So basically, he gets 1 out of every 6 games on average. And I mean, if that continues, Connor Hellebuck's going to end up playing about 70 games this year. Like based on that math, Comrie probably has 2 starts left this season. Now, I do wonder if and when the Jets are eliminated, I would think they would pull the reins back on Hellebuck at that point. And, so maybe
probably call up Mikkel Burden, right?
I would give Mikkel Burden at least 1 game, yeah. And then send him right back to the Moose, obviously, for the playoffs. But yeah, Eric Comrie, like, a lot of people thought that was going to be an Achilles heel for the Jets, that they spent all this money elsewhere, and then they had to, go bare minimum on the backup position. They had to sign, their own guy because they couldn't go out and pay for anybody. They had to let Laurent Brossoit walk for bigger money to Vegas, and they couldn't go get, a bigger name backup. And there was a lot of critics of that move for sure. And Eric Comrie has kind of silenced them all, and good for him. Like, you guys know him. Dave, of course, knows him well. He's a genuinely good human being, and he's the kind of guy that's easy to root for. And, teammates love him. Obviously, you get that sense every game he plays. And then, Nikolai Ehlers last night was just absolutely gushing, just the way he spoke about him, right? He sort of a deep sigh, and he said, comms, man. Like he's just beloved in that room. So, no surprise that when he's in the net, his teammates probably are doing everything they can to kind of rally in front of them, save for Josh Morrissey's late penalty there yesterday, which we could debate till the sun comes up. But
the less said about that one, probably the better at this point.
I just, every time something like that happens, I just retweet my column from a few weeks ago about the massive officiating issue the NHL has this year, because it continues to play out night after night in this league, no question about it. But yeah, I mean, great for Eric Comrie. I personally feel that maybe if Comrie was getting the net a little bit more, it might have served Connor Hellebuck better this season. I wonder if Hellebuck feels, just again, the sheer number of starts, that he doesn't really have anybody vying for his job, because he knows almost no matter what, he's going to play all these games. And I do wonder if it would have been to Hellebuck's advantage, to maybe mix Comrie in a little bit more. Obviously, what's done is done. You can't go back in time. But, I do think there's an element of overwork to Connor Hellebuck's game. And when we look at Eric Comrie's performance, the big question is, well, why were they overworking this guy? You could understand if the backup was terrible, but when the backup is more than competent, it certainly leaves you wondering about the goaltender usage.
It's absolutely, and you look at Eric Comrie's play, Mike, and you see a guy who looks like he's getting more and more confident game by game,
right.
And he's been he's been a revelation for the Jets in that backup role, and you wonder that, in hindsight, obviously, at the end of the year, the Jets will probably rue not giving him more of an opportunity. Mike McIntyre of the Winnipeg Free Press, our guest Saturday morning. We're live on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. We're live on YouTube. We're live on all of our social media platforms. Mike, we're going to have Craig Button on in the bottom of the next hour. And I'm not sure if you saw Craig's comments on TSN's Trade Center coverage, where, and you don't usually see an analyst, a TV analyst, be as forthcoming and as black and white as Craig was in this instance. And we'll play those clips for the audience if you've missed it coming up, in the 10 o'clock hour. But he basically laid the blame for the Jets' struggles, especially in their own zone, on the coaching staff and on the approach of the coaching staff. What did you think of Craig's comments? And then, sort of as an addendum to that, what did you think of Bruce Cassidy's comments last Friday when the Bruins were in town? And for an opposing coach to criticize another team, you don't see that happen all the time either. But Bruce Cassidy basically came out and said, yeah, we know the Jets are soft in front of their own zone or in front of their own net, and we took advantage of that. Those were two pretty bold statements from a league that doesn't generally generate bold statements.
Yeah, I thought that much more than Craig Button's comments. That was very enlightening for sure. And good on Bruce Cassidy. I'm sure that doesn't necessarily play well in the coaching fraternity. That's probably considered breaking an unwritten rule to kind of come out criticizing another team and an element of what they do. But let me ask, and I did see Craig Button's comments for sure. And I know they've triggered a lot of debate around here. Let me just ask the question in a slightly different way. What if it isn't necessarily coaching? What if this group is just not very coachable?
Well, that's a big problem then.
No, that's I think the bigger question and the better question, Mike.
Right. Look, I think Dave Lowry has tried to do a number of things, and we can only go by, of course, what he shares with us and he's not maybe as open as a guy like Paul Maurice was. But I think we've seen at times his frustration and his bewilderment with his group not doing the things that he says they need to do. So, are there systems in place that maybe need to be looked at? Probably. Again, the Jets, they made a coaching change in that Dave Lowry took over for Paul Maurice. The rest of the coaching staff remained, right? This was not a house cleaning situation. And so when you're talking about specifically in the defensive end, that's Charlie Huddy's department primarily. He's been with this team since day one, now in his, I guess, 11th season, right? So are there things that need to be looked at? Probably yes. That being said, I just wonder if some of Paul Maurice's frustration in kind of looking for the parachute. And now we're seeing some of Dave Lowry's frustration is that this group and certain players in this group, for whatever reason, are just difficult, if not downright impossible at times to coach. That come hell or high water, they're going to do their own thing. They think they know best. And, we see it often play out. And, when you hear a comment like Bruce Cassidy's, like, is being tough to play against and being tough to get to or easy to get to the front of the net, is that a systems issue, or is that more of a personnel and a performance issue? And I think it's more of the personnel and performance issue, that either they don't have enough players that are willing to do the things you need to do in the NHL to like clear out the front of the net, or they don't have the right players to do that you need. So, I think there's a lot of blame to go around, and to simply lay this, at say Dave Lowry's feet, I think is unfair. He's a guy, he was put in a tough spot here, a really tough spot. And he's a guy who's obviously coaching kind of for his future, because, I suspect if the Jets don't make the playoffs, that doesn't really boost his candidacy to get the position full time. Mm-hmm. I just think it's overly simplistic to blame it all on coaching. I just wonder, like I said, how coachable this team really is.
Well, to that point then, Mike, I mean, and, we had a lengthy conversation about this on the show a couple weeks back, that I'm of the opinion that it's this offseason, if it ends with the Jets not in the playoffs, as all indications are to that effect, that there needs to be some difficult conversations, and maybe, and there's precedent for it, a changing of the leadership. Yeah. Look, Blake Wheeler's not going to go anywhere because of couple factors. One, his contract probably isn't tradable, and two, True North is, has a loyalty to him. But it seems to me,
he's also the captain of the team. I think that has something to do with this as well.
But to my point, this is what my point's going to be, that I think you need to change that. I think that it's time to, remove the captaincy from him if it's an on-ice performance issue where the team sort of needs a new voice and a new leadership mantra to move forward.
True, maybe Joe Thornton can come in and teach like a master class on how to have the C given to Joe Pavelski.
There's precedent. It happened in Los Angeles with Dustin Brown too.
Yeah.
So
and by the way, Dustin Brown went on the record, I remember after that, and said that it helped him, sure, that he felt a weight lifted off his shoulders, that it was almost becoming a burden. And that's in a market that's not nearly a hockey mad market like Winnipeg. And you raise a good question. I wonder at times, Drew, we all see Blake Wheeler, right? What he's like when he comes out. Mm-hmm. I wonder if he's even enjoying being the captain anymore of this team. Like if it is more of a burden than it is a blessing. And yeah, I agree. I think there's going to have to be a full kind of off-season audit and looking at everything top to bottom. And I would include the leadership group in that as well. And look, I'm on the record as saying, I think I watch Pierre-Luc Dubois and what he does. I think the guy's got future captain written all over him.
Absolutely.
You talk about a guy who's hard to play against. I don't think Bruce Cassidy would be saying comments about, Pierre-Luc Dubois that he's easy to play against. In fact, I asked Columbus about Pierre-Luc Dubois, and specifically, he went the other way, and their head coach said, "I'm just glad I only see him twice a year," and praised Pierre-Luc Dubois, Brad Larson, that is. So, and Brad Larson is a guy who obviously played in the NHL. So yeah, I think that there's a number of things they're going to have to look at, and I would include the leadership group as well. We'll sort of see when the dust settles if there's any personnel changes. Like, is all the leadership group even back here next fall? Of course, there's been Mark Scheifele talk and whatnot. Mm-hmm. It's going to create, in my eyes, perhaps the most interesting offseason we're probably ever going to have for the Jets team. So No running away and hiding at the cottage all summer, guys. There's going to be lots of news to talk about.
Tell Jay Bell that he's got to limit his time, on the links,
right.
At Granite Hills. Like, I realize he likes to get his golf in, but he's got to stick around the city a little bit more.
Speaking of cottages, where did I miss something? Did Dave get traded at the deadline for a future considerations? Or
when Dave's not here, we treat him like he's Bruno, and we don't talk about Bruno.
Oh, okay.
When Dave's not, he's off gallivanting around the world.
Gotcha.
I think he's off on a scouting mission. I think he's checking out some of the Jets prospects playing overseas in the Swedish second division to see if there's any futures coming to the Moose that way.
Mike, let's just put it this way: he's somewhere much, much, much warmer. Let's just put it that way. He's in a location that has sand and surfing and everything like that. So he's much happier than I think we are right now.
When you said he's somewhere much warmer, I just assumed he's sitting around a fire and that we're going to see a fire pick, Ezzy. I know you love fire picks.
I think it's not a fire pick in that instance. I think it's called a luau, and there's a roasting pig going on the spit at that point in time. Mike McIntyre is with the Winnipeg Free Press. Mike, always appreciate your time, always appreciate your insight. Thanks for joining us, and we'll do it again real soon.
You bet, guys. Enjoy the weekend.
You too, Mike. Cheers. There he goes, Mike McIntyre of the Winnipeg Free Press. Let's head to break. When we come back, we're going to play those comments from Craig Button, and Craig joins us at the bottom of the hour. Much more Jets talk ahead for you. Saturday morning, hour number 2 of the Illegal Curve Hockey Show is up next. We're live on YouTube. We're live on all of our social media platforms.
Keeping Winnipeg laughing for over 30 years. Rumors, Canada's longest-running comedy club, bringing you the biggest laughs from the best comedians on the planet. Jerry Seinfeld, Chris Rock, Jon Stewart, Dennis Miller, Brad Garrett, the greats, and all the up-and-comers too. When was the last time you laughed out loud? Make it a great night out with friends, or book your office or birthday party. Even a fundraising event at Rumors. Get all the details and dates on upcoming shows at rumorscomedyclub.com.
Hi, Ez. A strange question for you. But why are you lying on the ground being crushed by a piano?
Well, Drew, I definitely tried to carry this baby grand piano down the stairs by myself, and somehow I failed miserably.
Right. I'm sorry. That was a silly question on my part. My apologies. Would you like me to call Rolly's Transfer Moving and Storage to help you move the piano? They are the most experienced piano moving company in Winnipeg, after all.
Yes, please call Rolly's and hurry. This piano is very, very heavy.
Rolly's Transfer Moving and Storage offers stress-free residential moving services while taking great care of your personal belongings, including your piano. At Rolly's, no job is too big or too small. For more information, visit rollys.com.
Hi, it's Drew from Illegal Curve here. Selling your home can be stressful, but it wasn't for me. Thanks to my friends at Zappia Group Realty, they made the process so easy. My home sold within 48 hours and with multiple offers. Zappia Group Realty took care of everything with their exquisite customer service and attention to detail. If you want to sell your home for more in less time, get started by talking to Frank and Mauro Zappia of Zappia Group Realty. Online at zappiagroup.com.
Hey, it's Aaron from Bernstein's Deli.
That's right, Ezzy. I'm the guy who makes all your sandwich dreams come true.
So when you think Illegal Curve, what comes to you?
How about juicy chicken schnitzel, grilled salami, fried onions, melted cheddar cheese, and honey mustard on toasted, thick-cut city rye bread?
Man, that's like the holy grail of sandwiches.
And so it shall be known as the Illegal Curve Sandwich.
The Illegal Curve Sandwich. Try it today at Bernstein's Deli. Find us at Corridon and Lanark or online at bernsteinsdeli.com.
Hey, Drew.
Ezzy, whoa, what a smile!
Yeah, I got my crowns done at Linden Market Dental Center, and they whiten my teeth.
I see.
They're so bright that every time I smile, they go...
We have hockey tonight. Do you have a mouth guard to protect those pearly whites?
I sure do.
Whoa, they even ting through the mouth guard.
Linden Market Dental Center covers all your dental needs from restorative to cosmetic dentistry and will fit you with a sports guard for that active lifestyle. 877 Waverly. See lindenmarketdental.com.
So you're a pizza person, you married a wing person, but somehow your kids are salad people. You can't pick your fam, but you can pick your BP meal deal. Starting from $18.99 for takeout or delivery at bostonpizza.com.
Welcome back to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Saturday morning, we're live on YouTube. We're live on all of our social media platforms. And I, for one, think Ezzy has never looked better than he currently does at this exact moment. He clearly did not make it back from commercial break in time, but, that's standard operating procedure for the professionalism that you've come to be used to here on this fine program. As you can see, I got the second screen going. Craig Button is going to join us at the bottom of the hour, and he made a bit of a stir earlier this week when he had some interesting comments about the Jets and their coaching staff. Thanks for joining us, Ezzy. Appreciate you being able to make it back in time, at least for the Button interview.
I had to tickle my kids.
You have to tickle your kids. Okay. I hope that's not a euphemism. I'm not even sure what that means, but
yeah, I warmed up my coffee and then I was tickling Ruben. I was making him laugh a little bit.
Okay, that's a good look. A dad prerogative like that, I can always, I can give you time to do that any day of the week. So yes, that is completely permitted. Let's play, in case anybody's missed it. Let's play these comments from Craig Button earlier this week. This was on the TSN Trade Center panel where they're talking about the Jets and they're talking about some of the disappointment that the Jets have experienced this year and where the blame for that shall lie. Here's Craig Button from earlier this week.
I think we might need a little audio there, Drew.
Audio's not playing? Okay, then I got, let me stop that for a second then. Sorry, I thought the audio would have been playing there. My apologies. I'm going to have to go back and figure this out.
I can pretend to be Craig Button before he comes on if you want.
No, I think we're good on that front, but I thought I had the audio up there. It didn't play? Okay. This is the problem when I try and use the fancy technologies. I usually end up screwing those up. Let me get back to that one in a second as soon as I figure that all out. But basically what Craig was all about there is he's saying that the Jets that a lot of their problems for the Jets have to do with the coaching staff. And he was very honest, in his opinion, of course, that the reason for the Jets' struggles this year is coaching. And is it the coaching necessarily of Dave Lowry, or is it the coaching of Paul Maurice? I think he was basically saying it was the coaching of both of them, that through and through the coaching was a problem for the Winnipeg Jets. And I thought Mike made some good points in that when we just had him on, talking about, is it the coaching or is it the players are not coachable? And I thought that was a worthwhile counterpoint to the comments that Craig made in his statement here, Ezzy.
Yeah, and even though we didn't play it there, most of us, I think a lot of people in the chat heard that. That was on trade deadline day, of course. I'm not sure if you mentioned that there, Drew.
I did, yes.
Yeah, so I mean, we know that team defense has been an issue. I don't know if you're gonna pull it up here or what you're doing, Drew, but you're throwing me off a little bit here. Are we gonna play it?
Yeah, I'm going to try and play it again. Let's see if I can get it with the volume. I mean, the volume's up on my end, so it should work. People in the chat can tell me if it's working or not working. Here you go. Let's try it again. If it doesn't work, then I'll give up, and you can just assume what I said is accurate.
How do you explain, Craig Button, why things have not gone as expected and as we projected?
Coaching. It's been average coaching. Paul Maurice stepped down. He felt that there was more in the team. He felt he couldn't get out of it. Now Dave Lowry is coaching. Now, this isn't about so much the people as much as it is about the systems they employ. It's specifically defensively. They're terrible in front of the net. They get pushed out of position. They give up lots of inner slot shots, lots of plays off the cycle. They create a lot of their own problems. That's coaching. And I would look at this team, and we look at them on paper. I think it's a really good team on paper. Are they any different than where the Calgary Flames were last year? Daryl Sutter comes in and he changes some significant things and says, this is the way we're going to play. I don't think that they understand what will give them success. And until that improves, the team won't improve. And either that's with the current coaching staff or Kevin Cheveldayoff has to look at a different coaching setup. But right now, that team, and I've watched them lots, the problems are they got average coaching.
That Craig Button from earlier this week with some really, strong comments. I mean, you don't usually hear analysis that pointed especially on one of the national broadcasters, maybe locally. I think
on a trade deadline show, right? Like that just came up because obviously they were talking about whether it was Andrew Kopp or Nate Bolio. I forget who they were talking about.
They were filling time, obviously, before the trades started to roll in.
After Gino Reda put on the lacrosse goalie equipment, I mean, they had to talk about something, right?
Exactly. I thought it was really, really interesting, that he puts all the blame on coaching, because I do believe coaching is a significant factor here. Look, I mean, I was on record when Paul Maurice was head coach as saying, as saying that he was at best average, and Dave Lowry comes in, and I point to the job Bruce Boudreau's done in Vancouver. And I know Vancouver is not in a playoff spot either at the moment, but you look at where Vancouver was when they hired Bruce Boudreau, and you look at where
under
Winnipeg
Travis Green,
was, right, when Travis Green got dismissed and they hired Bruce Boudreau, and you look at Winnipeg, where Winnipeg was when Paul Maurice left and Dave Lowry got hired, and I refuse to believe that Bruce Boudreau would not have got more out of this team than Dave Lowry has got out of this team. So I believe, and I've said this on air for a while now, that the Jets erred in not getting a more name head coach to replace Paul Maurice. And I still believe that's the case. And I don't think Dave Lowry is going to get the full-time job when the season ends. But you do wonder will the next head coach, whomever it is, an established guy like Mike Babcock, for example, or an up-and-coming guy.
Don't go there.
Why? I mean, I think Mike Babcock, look, if he's learned how to not be a bully, I don't know. Look, and I don't want to get into a cancel culture discussion because
please pick any other coach aside from Babcock. I'm just not a fan.
Why? I mean, look, I mean, I think he's if he's learned from his mistakes, I don't think that what he did as a head coach before was so heinous that he should not get another opportunity if he's learned from them. You have to do your due diligence. He wasn't overlooking sexual assaults like Joel Quenneville was in Chicago. So that to me is a non-starter. But I do think that somebody, maybe not Mike Babcock specifically, but somebody in that vein should be who the Jets.
There's a lot of good coaches out there, Drew, and it doesn't necessarily have to be someone that has tons of NHL experience and Stanley Cups and everything like that. Look at the Jets
Sorry, I'll let you finish. I don't think it can be I don't think it can be somebody else, a younger coach who comes in maybe in his first opportunity, without there also being significant changes to the leadership group in the dressing room. If the status quo is what's happening in the dressing room, it has to be somebody who can challenge that status quo and has the gravitas to challenge that status quo. I'll let you finish your thought now, Izzy.
Gravitas is a very Drew Mindell word. I like it.
It is a very Drew Mindell word. I agree with that.
You've mentioned this yourself, Drew, about this Jet season and what is coming up in the off season, top down, right? Like we're talking general manager down. This is the type of crossroads that the Jets are at. We've talked about this many times. When you have Blake Wheeler with only a couple of years left on his contract, and you've got Mark Scheifele with only a couple of years left on his contract, Connor Hellebuck, like we know that the Jets window isn't as big as it was back in 2018 when they went on that long run to the West Final, right?
Right.
You could argue that the Jets window.
Team has had.
Well, I mean, the Jets window is probably 2 or 3 years to win with this current group, right? Like we're talking about the Scheifele, Wheeler, Ehlers, Connor, Morrissey, Hellebuck group. Like, I mean, you throw Dubois in there, but I'm talking about like the Jets core, all these players that have been drafted, or in Wheeler's case, obviously he came over from Atlanta, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when you're talking about coaching and you're talking about personnel and you're talking about the leadership group, there's a lot of things to unpack here. I'll say this much. The way that the Jets play and the system that they employ, the defensive coverage has not improved under Dave Lowry. It's almost gotten worse.
Yeah.
And, we've talked about that, Lowry hasn't brought in a completely new system. He hasn't changed much as far as I can see in terms of the way that the Jets play or the way they deploy their forward lines. Like, look at the fourth line. That's been a criticism of the Jets for, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, that the Jets don't really use their fourth line much. Last year, you could argue that there wasn't a lot of talent on that line. Like, all due respect to, Nate Thompson and Trevor Lewis, the Jets have had a lot more talent on the fourth line with guys like, Dominic Toninato or, Jansen Harkins, Evgeny Svechnikov, Austin Pagecki.
It's never had an identity. I mean, and when you have a fourth line, I think you need to know what you want from your fourth line. And I know how highly you speak about the Clutterbuck, Martin, Cizikas fourth line in New York. And it's obviously not what it once was. But when it was at its peak, you knew what you were going to get shift after shift after shift from that fourth line. For the last, you can't even count the number of years, Ezzy, where that fourth line for the Jets has just been sort of a mishmash of parts to see if it ever fits together into something. But, to no surprise, it never has, because there's no real structure or game plan associated with what they want from that fourth line.
Yeah. So, and it's not just the fourth line. That was just one example of how things have kind of stayed the same under, Dave Lowry. Right. But I think, the biggest issue with this team, and I realize that, the Jets have struggled to score goals at times, right? Like, we've seen that as of late, but then, you see them pop in 7 goals against Vegas, right? So it's been kind of a weird season in that sense. Like, Kyle Connor's putting together a career season. Pierre-Luc Dubois has had a great bounce back season, but at times the Jets have had trouble offensively, but it's really on the defensive side. We saw that again, yesterday with a couple of turnovers from Logan Stanley. And we're not singling Stanley out, because it's not just Stanley. I mean, the commitment to team defense has not been there from the forwards, I would say. And specifically, Blake Wheeler, Mark Scheifele. I mean, we know who it is. Kyle Connor, I think, has improved offensively, but unless you have commitment to team defense from all 18 players on the ice, I mean, things are not going to improve. So I don't know if it's just coaching or if it's combination. I would probably lean towards it's a combination of, certain players on this team just not buying in to, having to back check and having the back pressure. I think the Jets oftentimes, having watched the Jets, and we've watched every single game this year, or almost every single game this year. Sometimes
I believe the phrase you're looking for is gluttons for punishment.
Yeah, exactly. But, certain times I would say that the Jets are, too preoccupied with, turning the puck up the ice and transitioning. You hear a lot about transition offense, right? And sometimes, that's what they give up. They give up defensively, and they give up too much time. And we've seen that defensive coverage, like Mark Sports Video, who's a frequent viewer. I'm not sure if he's in the chat today.
He's here today. Yeah,
he often puts together videos, and he's been doing this this is his third year that I can remember he's doing this. And we've seen the same mistakes, just lost coverage. I mean, guys not picking up the men in front of the net, or, just not making the right reads, or the gaps you hear a lot about gaps, just, the gaps aren't tight enough. Like, this is something that's been going on for years now. So if you don't see it from the entire team, it's not just Blake Wheeler and Mark Scheifele and, Nikolai Ehlers. It's every single player on the ice. Until they commit as a team to play better in their own zone, I mean, you're going to see these types of results. You're going to see, the Jets losing 5-2 to Ottawa. You're going to see, this up and down type of hockey where one night they look good and one night they look pretty bad.
Well, I mean, it's the consistency of it all. It's just what's my phrase been from game one this season? The attention to detail. And it's not there. And I think attention to detail largely starts with the coaching staff. It starts with the coaching staff absolutely making that a priority. That saying, before we can do anything else, before, success will find us, it starts by having a commitment to attention to detail. And maybe attention to detail is oftentimes a euphemism for defensive play, but that's truly where it begins. I mean, when was the last time you saw a team that really, truly succeeded playing a run and gun style? I mean, the Ottawa Senators play a run and gun style for the most part, but the Senators don't have hopes of succeeding this season for the most part. They don't mind playing that kind of style. But when they are ready to be a competitive franchise again, and when they're ready to be a competitive team again, they're going to have to get that attention to detail and that defensive commitment first and foremost. It always starts in your own zone. And so you need a coach who can truly get the players to buy into that. And for whatever reason,
and the leadership group, though, and that's why this is not,
what Mike was saying in the interview about 20 minutes ago. I thought his comments were bang on about the leadership group, because I do believe if the leadership group is Pierre-Luc Dubois and Josh Morrissey and Nikolai Ehlers and Kyle Connor, that attention to detail will be better. I mean, it speaks volumes to me about the guys, about who came out to speak to the media on Thursday night after the loss to Ottawa. Probably, look, the playoffs were a long shot anyways, but, probably a significant death knell to the Jets and their playoff chances on Thursday night. And it wasn't...
They had to get at least a point out of that game.
Had to get at least a point. And it wasn't Wheeler, and it wasn't Scheifele who spoke. It was, if I recall correctly, Ehlers and Dubois, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep, you're right.
And that, to me, speaks volumes about what's actually happening within the walls of the Jets dressing room.
Yeah, and I mean, you're getting into a lot here. We don't know. I mean, we just don't know. I mean, it's all speculation at this point in terms of what's going on in the dressing room. I mean, Drew, we don't go to as many games as we used to, and we're definitely haven't been in the dressing room much over the last couple of seasons, right? But I mean, forget who came out and talked. It's just the way. Look at the way these guys play, and yeah, Scheifele's having another great offensive year, but he's a bad defensive hockey player. I'm sorry. I mean, maybe somebody's going to disagree with that, but he is a bad defensive hockey player. And we've said this time and time again. Nobody is expecting Scheif to be Patrice Bergeron or, Andrzej Kopitar or Alex Barkov, some of the, elite defensive centermen in the NHL. Nobody's expecting that. But, we could point back to half a dozen, a dozen cases where, Scheifele's just lackadaisical, back checking has cost the Jets a goal. Yeah. Really. So I don't care, how, if Scheifele ends up with 85 points and the Jets miss the playoffs, I mean, what are we talking about here? We don't these guys don't play hockey to get, high point totals. They play hockey to win. They want to go to the playoffs and win a Stanley Cup. So it's not all on Scheifele, but we've seen other players and just not have that commitment, not be sharp enough in their own zone. So yeah, that to me, that is coaching and that's leadership. It's a combination of both. And, we'll see what happens with the coaching staff. But based on the way this year has gone, I don't know how you bring back this entire coaching staff. I don't know who stays. I mean, I think Jamie Kompon is a great coach. I have no issues with him. I think, that he should remain, part of the coaching staff. And I'm not calling for anybody's, job here. I'm just saying with the way the Jets have played on a night in and night out basis and the fact that there's a good chance that they could miss the playoffs, I just don't know how you bring back the same coaching staff.
Well, I don't think you can. I don't think it's a starter. I mean, it's a non-starter from the fan base perspective, from the purchasing customer, because as much of it is it's a personnel decision and it's a personal decision. It's also a business decision. What message are you sending to your paying customers if you miss the playoffs? And you just say, okay, status quo again, especially when it comes to behind the bench, because it wasn't that many months ago, Ezzy, where this team was being talked about as a Stanley Cup contender. Now, was that foolish at the time? Probably. Were people caught up in the excitement level of the acquisitions of Dillon and Schmidt and everything else, and the sort of the revamped Winnipeg Jets? Yeah. And did they maybe not see the forest through the trees? Absolutely. But you can't run back the same coaching and maybe even management group when the season has been this big of a disappointment, simply because you're sending a message to your fan base that the status quo, i.e. disappointment, i.e. missing the playoffs, i.e. continued diminished results, are okay with the organization. You can't sell that, because people are clearly being more selective with their entertainment dollars. And they were being more selective with their entertainment dollars, I would argue.
This segment brought to you by Tourism Winnipeg.
Prior to even COVID, you saw times where, the season ticket base was still strong, of course, but there were games where, when tickets are returned and they wouldn't get sold or things like that. And that to me isn't a statement about the Jets or anything. That's just a statement about, charging, $350 for a single game seat on a Tuesday night against some random team. I wouldn't pay for that. A lot of people smartened up and said they wouldn't pay for that either. But right now, when your season ticket base is diminishing, when you're selling mini packs, and when you're trying to, really sell tickets on a game by game basis for the first time since the team returned, you can't accept the status quo and bring it back and sell that to the fans as something that is worth their dollar. If the Manitoba Theatre Center had a season of plays that weren't very good and weren't well received, the artistic director would have some questions asked, and maybe the artistic director wouldn't be in that role the next year.
I actually thought King Lear was very good.
You are a big Shakespeare fan. I know you're. Where art thou? Forget it. I'm not even going to try it.
Where art thou, lemon meringue pie?
It's in your belly. We all know where the lemon meringue pie is. In any event, as we've outlined, it's going to be a fascinating offseason for this Winnipeg Jets team. It's going to be a fascinating offseason as it pertains to the coaching staff. It's going to be a fascinating offseason as it pertains to the leadership group. But I'm on record, and I said it, I think it was when Rennie was on with us, Sean Reynolds, a few weeks ago, that it needs to be an offseason of hard conversation.
Yes.
Of difficult conversations. And I think difficult conversations have not come easily to this organization. They have not come easily to Kevin Cheveldayoff. They've not come easily to Mark Chipman, the owner of the team, who is definitely involved in player personnel moves, I think to a greater degree than any of us truly know. And it's one of those times where you might have to sit down with Blake Wheeler, and you might have to sit down with Mark Scheifele, and you might have to tell them that this season was unacceptable and that we're going in another direction. Not to say that they're not members of this team anymore, not to say that they're not important contributors to this team anymore, because I agree, guys who score at the level that Mark Scheifele scores, and guys who score, even though he's overpaid, to the level that Blake Wheeler scores, they don't grow on trees. It's hard to trade for that. It's not easy to acquire for that. So is there a role still for Scheifele and Wheeler on this Winnipeg Jets team? Absolutely, in my opinion. But I think it's a diminished role, and it's not a leadership role. And to Mike's point, I think it would be interesting to see how those guys respond to that change. Given that maybe that removes a weight from both of their shoulders. Maybe Wheeler's been a captain of this Jets team for a number of years now, and the accomplishments that he's accomplished do not get taken away from him. He was a good captain for this team.
His number will be retired one day for Jets 2.0, and there's probably going to be a statue, at True North Square.
I mean, let's not get carried away with a statue sort of thing. But
don't worry, Drew, you're going to get a statue too.
Thank you. It's more made out of toothpicks and marshmallows, but I appreciate it nonetheless.
No, but what I mean is, like, maybe I'm going a little bit far with the statue here, but I mean, his number is going to be retired by Jets 2.0. I mean, he's been here since 2011. He's had a fantastic career. That's not what we're not. Nobody's saying that he's a bad hockey player. What you're saying is, based on his skill set and his age right now.
Yeah,
I mean, he's probably better suited for a diminished role, like not playing top power play, not playing on the top line. Maybe it's a third line role. And the C and the A, again, we talked about it with Mikey McIntyre. There's precedent for this. Joe Thornton in San Jose, Dustin Brown in LA. These guys are, we were talking about Thornton. He's one of the best passers of all time. He's going to go into the Hockey Hall of Fame, probably first ballot. The point is, you have to identify, the direction of this team. I agree with you. That's really what it ultimately comes down to. In that direction, you have to look at coaching. You have to look at the GM. You have to look at the leadership group. You have to look at personnel, obviously, everything like that. And, there's no easy answers here. I mean, the Jets have to get this back on the right track. This is not a rebuilding team. No. You're not going to go, younger next year. That's not what's going to, I mean, obviously Cole Perfetti is going to play a full NHL season, and you're going to have a guy like, David Gustafson in the lineup, maybe Vili Heinola. But this is a Jets team that next year is going to be competing for a Stanley Cup. They're not going backwards. They got to go forwards.
the drivers are still going to be the drivers of this team next year. And I agree with that entirely. Let's bring in our guest from TSN, the director of scouting, a good friend of ours. Craig Button joins us on the program. Craig, good morning. Nice to see you. How are things?
Things are good. Drew, how are things with you?
Hey, we're doing fine and dandy. It's a Saturday morning. It's freezing cold. We're talking hockey. It's heated. It's heated on the show for as cold as it might be outside. So that keeps us nice and warm.
We need one of those Chinooks, Craig, because it's minus 25 here. I mean, at the end of March, like we've just been through enough. We need this winter to end here.
Is it really minus 25, Ezra?
Minus 25 in Winnipeg.
With the wind chill, it's a bit nippy out there, but it just means that we can get the outdoor rinks back up and running again.
Yeah, that's not fair. That's not fair on March 26th, minus 25. That's cruel. That is like somebody saying, okay, here's what we're going to give you. No way. It's going to be like 11 degrees here in Calgary today. So I don't mean to rub it in or anything, but I'm ready for the end of winter. And I'm sure everybody in Winnipeg is as well.
It has certainly been a long, drawn-out winter here in Winnipeg. A bit of a winter of discontent as it pertains to the Winnipeg Jets. Craig, you certainly made some waves here in the peg with your comments about the Jets coaching staff on TSN's Trade Center trade deadline show earlier in the week. And, one of the obviously we always enjoy having you on for your analysis that, as it pertains to the Jets and the league in general. But really, it was those comments you made about the Jets coaching staff that I thought deserved maybe a further explanation or the opportunity for you to expand more on them when you said that a lot of the Jets' problems this year, and I assume you mean from both the Paul Maurice era and the Dave Lowry era, had to do with mediocre coaching. Can you maybe expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, and certainly I wasn't focused in on the staff per se as much as I was focused in on the coaching per se. And, I always say this. So, who instills the systems of team play for a team? The coaches. So who's responsible and accountable when the systems of team play are not working? The coaches. So when you have challenges and there's certain areas of your team that aren't functioning in a certain way, it's incumbent upon the coaches to find solutions to those problems because they're the ones that are accountable for it. Nobody else. This idea that and you're going to tell me that you got 20 wrong players. I mean, the whole discussion started with, we look at this Winnipeg Jets team and you look at a team and you say, wow, why have they found themselves in this position? And you can say, okay, this player hasn't played well. This player, a couple of years ago, we were forgiving because of the blue line departures. I mean, that was a real blow to the team. They lost 4, really good defensemen that really formed a good part of the team. So you're forgiving, you understand. They had Dylan in the offseason. They had Nate Schmidt. Up front, they're really good. Go in the net, they're really good. So, I mean, unless somebody's ready to come out and say they don't have the right players, which I don't believe the case is, let's look at where the team struggles. They are at the bottom of the league, right near the bottom of the league, in just about all defensive metrics. All defensive metrics. Slot shots given up, inner slot shots given up, cycle chances given up. They give up the middle of the ice. I'll tell you right now, if it wasn't for Connor Hellebuck, this team would have been out of the playoffs long ago. That's coaching systems. So what am I going to sit here and say? Oh, well, and again, it's up to Dave Lowry, just like it was up to Paul Maurice. Find solutions. It's your job to find solutions. So I wasn't saying that the coaching staff is mediocre. I mean, there's lots of areas of every team where you can look at the coaching and say, hey, listen, this needs to be better. We don't hesitate to say, geez, the power play is not working, right? Like what has to happen? The penalty kill is not working, which has been abysmal this year for the Winnipeg Jets. It improved to a certain extent, but not very good. Then, and I say this too, we can provide critical analysis of goaltending, forwards, defenseman play and everything. Like when you have metrics that are right at the bottom of the league in defensive play, like either you got the wrong defenseman and the wrong goaltender, or the coaching isn't good enough. I've watched this team lots. I think that the real reason that they have found themselves in this position is because in those areas of defensive play, and I just mentioned where they're right near the bottom of the league, that's coaching. It hasn't been good enough. I don't know what else you wanted to say. Like, oh, wow, like it hasn't been good enough.
Well, we had Mike McIntyre, the Winnipeg Free Press, on in the first hour, Craig, and he sort of came at that idea from a bit of a different perspective. What if the players aren't coachable, or they're not listening, or they're too stubborn? And this may be more of a general question. How do you get through to coaches? In your experience in the league, or how do you get through to players who might be difficult to coach and who think they know better than what the coaching staff is instructing them to do?
Well, to me, that's a real leap, because now you're saying that the players are uncoachable, or the players aren't receiving coaching. Wow, like you talk about getting personal, that's personal, right? Like I'll ask this. Like I asked this question again. So if your message isn't getting through to the players, that's a coaching issue. It's a coaching issue. You better figure out how to get your message through. And again, like if we want to sit here and have the discussion that this team is poorly formed and poorly constructed, well, then let's have the discussion. I'm happy to have it with Mike McIntyre. I'm happy to have it with anybody. Then let's talk about the job Kevin Shovel-Dayoff has done. And I'll say this: I've done that. I don't see a problem with the playing personnel. Is there areas you want to be a little bit better? So it's easy to go like that. And again, when that argument starts, we're getting away from the focal point. Okay, these players aren't uncoachable. These players are good. They got good players. And if you recall what I also said, I said this looks a lot like Calgary Flames last year.
Yeah,
it looks a lot like the Calgary Flames last year. And what happened? I mean, they changed coaches, and ostensibly, I mean, that becomes better coaching. Right. And I'm not saying that the current coaching staff can't get better results. I don't advocate for letting coaches go. I mean, I do say this, though. Either the present coaching staff has to find solutions, and if they can't, then there has to be a consideration of, do you have to find somebody else that can? But I see the Winnipeg Jets in the same exact light as I saw the Calgary Flames. And last year in the summertime, Goudreau's not a Daryl Sutter player. Oh, you got to get rid of Kachuk. You got to get rid of this guy, and they got to get rid of that guy. And then they made some additions in the offseason. Coleman, Trevor Lewis, a Winnipeg Jet. And now everybody's going, what happened to the Calgary Flames? All those players that were uncoachable, that weren't Daryl Sutter players, oh boy, they're right at the top of the league.
So, Craig, is there a Sutter brother that you can send us from Alberta? Like, would Brent Sutter maybe come over to Winnipeg and coach the Jets?
Ezra, I'm not going there. I'm just
kidding.
There.
Obviously,
I know you are. I know you are. But that's why I use it. Like, again, if you want to go and have the examination about the players, okay, let's have it. I'm not saying to you guys. I'm saying let's have it. Mm-hmm. I don't think it's even close. Let me just see. You don't want Kyle Connor. You don't want Mark Scheifele. You don't want Nikolai Ehlers. I mean, they traded Andrew Kopp, right? You don't want Adam Lowry. You don't want Paul Stastny. You don't want Neil Pionk or Josh Morrissey or Brendan. Really? You don't want Connor Hellebuck? Really? So it's the players. I'll tell you what. That starts to seep in. I'll tell you what. That's a problem too. And I'm not saying that it is. Bottom line is, and I say this all the time. You know what? When you're watching a team and you're providing critical analysis, I never said that the coaches are bums. I didn't say they're not. I said they got a coaching issue. And the coaching issue is, how do you improve your defensive play? How do you improve it? That's it. And either they find a solution for it, or Kevin Shovel-Dayoff has to consider what his options may be. And that includes a coaching change. Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to couch it here.
Mm-hmm. Let me ask you this. You talk about Calgary and you talk about the impact that Daryl Sutter had in changing the fortunes of a Flames team that is very similar to the underachieving Flames team from last year. What did Daryl Sutter do that made all the difference in Calgary? Was it accountability? Was it a scheme? Daryl Sutter's a hell of an NHL head coach, but when he was hired last year by the Flames, a lot of people sort of turned their noses up and said, well, what has he done lately that warrants him getting another opportunity? So from your perspective, watching Calgary, what has Daryl Sutter done that maybe could be a bit of a lesson for what the Jets could do in this offseason if things come to that effect here in Winnipeg?
Well, I think too, for the coaching staff, it's something they should look at. So when I just mentioned all the metrics that are clear, near the bottom of the league in inner slot shots against, rebound chances against, everything. What area of the ice is that?
Right in front of the goalie.
The middle of the ice.
Yeah.
Okay. Ken Holland said it best, like, I don't know how many years ago. He said, you can play the game on the Atlantic Ocean. It doesn't matter how big the ice surface is. If you can't get an attack at the net or defend in front of the net, it doesn't matter how big the ice surface is. Okay. What Daryl Sutter did was he said, we're defending the middle of the ice. We're not chasing outside. How many times have you seen the defenseman chase outside the dots and create a vulnerability in the middle of the ice? I've seen it. I've seen it does it all year long, right? That's a fact, right? So the Calgary Flames were playing that way too. And then Daryl said, no, we're not playing that way. We got to defend the middle of the ice. We got to defend inside the dots. And we're going to have what I call positional discipline. It comes down to positional discipline. And even the other night, I'm watching the game and understand the players do what the coaches ask them to do. Don't ever think that the players aren't coachable. The players are doing exactly what the coach, I shouldn't say exactly, but when they want pressure up, think about the second goal by the Ottawa Senators. Mm-hmm. The play's coming up the ice. They want Dylan to come right across and close that play off. He comes from his left defense position, wants to close it off at the blue line outside the dots. Well, now the play gets in on Pionk. Pionk gets fumbled around with his stick and everything, right? They never did get sorted out. I mean, Dylan ended up whipping on the puck and around the net. No, that was the second goal was the one over Stanley's head.
Yeah, this is the third goal you're talking about, the 2-on-1.
The winning. Like, I mean, like you just can't have that type of play. Like, why do you want to chase outside the dots? Why do you want to get yourself caught outside the dot? That's positional discipline. That's the number one thing Daryl cleaned up. And I'll tell you what, it was simple for anybody. He said, this is the way we're going to play. So I can look at other things, and start to think. But if you don't defend the middle of the ice and you don't defend it well, you're going to have big problems. And when the numbers, the straight out metrics tell you that this is a big problem and it continues to happen, okay. Like I said, I've watched I watch the Jets lots, like not here all the time. They got a fundamental problem of not being able to defend the middle of the ice.
Craig, I wanted to
in front of their net.
Yeah, it seems like it's a bit of a, I mean, not simplistic answer, but it seems, like you said, it's a simple game to some regard that, you defend the front of your net and you get to the front of the net on the offensive side of things. Are the Jets on their systems? Are the Jets overcomplicating things? I mean, based on how you've broken it down, exquisitely here, it just seems like it should be more straightforward as to how the Jets should improve rather than chasing to the outside of the dots, like you were saying.
I think it is straightforward. Like, quite frankly, I think it is straightforward. And again, I remember when Mike Babcock was coaching the Toronto Maple Leafs. Coaches love pressure. Listen, I love pressure. I love applying pressure on your opponent, to see how they break. But there's a difference between, smart pressure and just pressure for pressure's sake. Okay. And you got to balance those out. And, good teams are able to take advantage of mindless pressure. I'm using mindless very loosely, right? Where you're just applying pressure for pressure's sake. You know what? They know how you're going to play. They say once they get here, chip it into the middle. Let's move there. Be the next guy moving into that position. You take advantage. I can tell you what, all the pregame scouts against the Winnipeg Jets are exactly along those lines. So again, when you continue, I get it. I get you want pressure. I love pressure, but it's not just pressure for pressure's sake, right? Like, you got to be really, really careful about it. And the Toronto Maple Leafs ran into problems with it. You run into problems with it on the penalty kill. Good teams on the penalty kill are going to break you down real quick if you're not applying pressure smartly and again. So to me, sometimes it's not so much that it's simple as much as it is, okay, if we play this way, how can we take some of the burden off of our players? Like, you're telling me Brendan Dillon just decided that he was going to apply pressure coming across the blue line that play? No. Brendan Dillon didn't just decide that he was going to play that way. And Neil Pionk doesn't just decide he's going to play that way. None of them do. They're doing what they're being asked to do.
Craig, I wanted to ask
our
you.
guest on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show Saturday morning. We're live on YouTube. We're live on all of our social media platforms. You know Craig, of course, with his analysis in the intermissions of Jets games, and of course, as being TSN's director of scouting.
Craig, we were talking about Vili Heinola earlier, and he's not in the lineup right now. And I don't want to ask you to pick between these two players, but I just wanted to ask you, from an observer, as you mentioned, you watch a lot of Jets games. We know that Vili Heinola is the top Jets D prospect right now. Like, what do you just think of this usage? Because he's not playing games right now. He was playing with the Manitoba Moose as one of their top defensemen, but especially the way Stanley has struggled a little bit. I would certainly like to see Heinola back in the Jets' top six.
Yeah, no, listen, I think the Jets have a luxury going on. I think Vili Heinola and Dylan Sandberg are NHL ready. I think they're capable. So, whoever you want to look at on the blue line and say we want to take this player out and put that player in, that's a nice luxury for Kevin Cheveldayoff in the Winnipeg Jets, because I think those two guys can play right now. So all their other 6 defensemen are all signed next season. So that also gives the Jets some opportunity to explore, where they could improve in other areas of their team. And then, again, I talked earlier about the departure of those 4 defensemen, right? And now, Brendan Dillon and Nate Schmidt come in, right? You have these 2 young defensemen, and the Winnipeg Jets do a fantastic job, in my view, of developing players. Let them grow, let them get better. And we've seen that all the way through. And I think that, we can sit down and say, okay, this player's struggling or that player's struggling. Why don't we put him in there? My bigger concern right now on Vili Heinola would be him not playing. I want him playing, right? And I get travel and everything and where you're at. But at the same time, you're looking, Ezra, at different opportunities depending on who you're playing against, right? Like, Pionk's not a big defenseman. Josh Morrissey's an all-in competitor. He's going to be up for every challenge. He's not big. DeMello's not a big defenseman, right? So do you want another 6-foot defenseman in your lineup, right? I mean, and that factors into the coaching decisions and whatnot, right? That doesn't mean that he's not good enough to play. It just means, depending on who you might be playing, a good forecheck team, a team that has a little bit heavier forwards, might be able to lean on you a little bit more, not just on Vili, because he's a good player, but it puts a burden and a stress maybe on some of your other players. But there's no question in my mind that Heinola and Sandberg can play in the NHL right now for the Jets. But that to me is going to be something that I think is going to benefit them as they explore what they do with their roster in the offseason.
Craig, we'll let you go on this final question. This has been tremendous, and it's always your appearances here on the show are. It was last Friday where Boston came into Winnipeg and they beat the Jets based on a flurry of goals in the third period. And after the game, Bruce Cassidy talked about the Bruins' ability to attack the inside of the Jets, to get to the high danger zones, as we're talking about. And I have the quote for you here. We talked about getting to the interior against Winnipeg. They have some smaller defensemen, a couple of really big ones, but some smaller ones, Cassidy said. And statistically, they don't defend the slot that well for whatever reason. What does it say to you when an opposing head coach talks about the Winnipeg Jets struggles? And I can sort of see you chuckling there, because in my experience, you don't often hear a coach talk about an opposing team in a bit of a negative light. And that's what happened here with Bruce Cassidy. So what does that say to you if you want to bring this whole thing full circle that we've talked about this morning?
So, Drew, what I'll tell you, I said, I can guarantee you every single pregame scout against the Winnipeg Jets is exactly what Bruce Cassidy said. Because the numbers are so obvious. It's not like, let's probe this area. Let's see how they handle it. They're in the middle of the pack. They might succumb. They might not. They're right near the bottom. So that's exactly where you put the emphasis on, right? You go, we're going to put the pressure on right on this team, because they're not very good in that area. They aren't. And I'm not guessing here, guys. I'm not guessing here. Like, every single pregame scout says this is how we're going to attack the Winnipeg Jets. So again, until you improve it, until you show it's not a weakness, they're going to keep attacking your weakness. And that's as simple as that. And as for, we sit here and so Bruce Cassidy gets asked after the game what his thoughts are, right? It's not Bruce Cassidy's job to come in here and, massage his message. He says, hey, because remember, he's not here to talk about he's here to talk about the Boston Bruins. He's delivering a message to his fans and his fan base and to his players. Hey guys, you did what we needed to do to win. And here's how we tackled it. It becomes great insight for the fans. Bottom line is, it doesn't matter what the Winnipeg Jets fans or coaches or players think. It's a fact. You know what? It's one of the things that I say, in one of the comments that, I say, you know what? You're in the public spotlight, you're coaching, you're playing, you're a goaltender, whatever. There's going to be some criticism at any point in time. I call it critical. I think as long as you don't get personal, Bruce Cassidy didn't say, oh, geez, I don't understand what those coaches are doing. Or, they don't see. They're saying that this is something that we're going to attack, right? And again, sometimes you got to go in the corner to get the puck. You got to take a hit to make a play, right? To use a hockey analogy, right? Bottom line is, if you got a weakness, don't complain about it, fix it. That's the way I look at it.
Craig, I just had one last question
Sure.
for you. I was thinking about this, last night, thinking about we knew we were going to talk about the Jets, obviously, but I wanted to ask you about the trade deadline. I realized that people probably want to move on, and, we had enough of the 22 hours of coverage. Obviously, it was fantastic on TSN, highlighted by Gino Retta strapping on those lacrosse goalie pads. I absolutely love that. That was a highlight for me. I don't know about you, Craig, but I wanted to ask you if you were surprised at how many 2023 first-round picks were traded. Like, we knew there were going to be some, but it seemed like, and I realized there's salary cap concerns, and I realized that, the 2023 draft is going to be strong. But were you surprised at how many 2023 first-round picks were traded as opposed to 2022 first-round picks? Because it seems like this year we saw more, draft picks from, 2 years ahead traded than we have in previous years.
Yeah, it's interesting, Ezra. I will say this: as long as I've been in the NHL, the next draft is always better than the current draft. You wait till next year. People will be talking, the 2024 draft, it'll be really good. Next year's draft is as good as this year's draft. Trust me, okay? Don't focus in on Connor Bedard because he's one player, right? And don't focus in on Shane Wright. He's one player. There's going to be a whole plethora of players that are going to be drafted and end up being really good players in the NHL. So that's the first thing I'll say. A lot of teams, they're looking. So you're the Montreal Canadiens, and you say, listen, we have all these picks, and you know what? We want to get something for Ben Sherratt. So the Florida Panthers say, well, we don't have our 2022 first-round pick. How does the 23 first-round pick sound? Okay, sounds good, right? And I think it becomes a case of some teams didn't have their first round pick. Other teams are just teams on the receiving end are going, well, a 2023 unprotected first round draft pick is better than a 2022 first round draft pick. I shouldn't say better. I'm not getting a 2022, so what can I get and where does it benefit me? If in the Western Hockey League, they can trade first round picks and everything. In the Ontario Hockey League, you can't trade a first round pick, the pick itself. So if you go back and look at transactions in the OHL, all they do is trade second round and third round picks in the future. Like it's like 2027, like they got to go start scouting the 11-year-olds, right? but it's almost like, it's almost like a currency, Ezra, that you take it and you go, okay, we're going to trade that now. And then so now, the Montreal Canadiens have a first round draft pick, perhaps next year that they can go and trade. And if it's the Florida Panthers first round draft pick, it's like a second round pick anyway, in my view. So I think it's just a matter of getting something on the receiving end for a team that's the best they can get and saying, hey, we got a first round pick. And for other teams saying, hey, listen, this is what we'll give you. We're not giving it to you this year, or we don't have it to give you this year. So away you go. I mean, look at what the Tampa Bay Lightning did in getting Brandon Hagel. I mean, they give up a 2023 and a 2024 first round draft pick. I mean, so for the Chicago Blackhawks, they're saying, okay, this is what we need to get. But those players that they draft ultimately in that area, because Tampa's going to be a real good team, we're talking about 2027, 2028 before they start to realize anything. You can't tell me that teams aren't prepared to trade a 2023 first-round draft pick, knowing that player is 4 and 5 years away at the best case scenario of contributing to their team.
Yeah, I don't think Steven Stamkos is losing any sleep about that kind of trade when he's holding the Stanley Cup for a third consecutive year. Craig Button is TSN's director of scouting. You see him all the time on the Jets games, providing excellent analysis. Craig, you're one of our favorites. You always bring the honesty. You always bring the energy. Thanks so much for joining us this morning.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. I always listen. I love being with you guys. I always appreciate when you ask me, and it's always a pleasure to chat Jets and hockey with you guys.
The way things are looking, we'll be talking about some the NHL draft before you know it, as opposed to the playoffs here in Winnipeg. Thanks again, Craig. Have a great weekend. There you go,
too.
Craig Button, TSN Director of Scouting, joining us on the program. Let's take our final break. We'll come back. We'll wrap up. We'll talk about tomorrow against the Coyotes. Stay with us. It's a Saturday morning. We're having some fun on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. We're live on YouTube. We're live on all of our social media platforms.
Keeping Winnipeg laughing for over 30 years. Rumors, Canada's longest-running comedy club, bringing you the biggest laughs from the best comedians on the planet. Jerry Seinfeld, Chris Rock, Jon Stewart, Dennis Miller, Brad Garrett, the greats, and all the up-and-comers too. When was the last time you laughed out loud? Make it a great night out with friends, or book your office or birthday party. Even a fundraising event at Rumors. Get all the details and dates on upcoming shows at rumorscomedyclub.com.
Hi, Ez. A strange question for you. But why are you lying on the ground being crushed by a piano?
Well, Drew, I definitely tried to carry this baby grand piano down the stairs by myself, and somehow I failed miserably.
Right. Yeah, I'm sorry. That was a silly question on my part. My apologies. Would you like me to call Rolly's Transfer Moving and Storage to help you move the piano? They are the most experienced piano moving company in Winnipeg, after all.
Yes, please call Rolly's and hurry. This piano is very, very heavy.
Rolly's Transfer Moving and Storage offers stress-free residential moving services while taking great care of your personal belongings, including your piano. At Rolly's, no job is too big or too small. For more information, visit rollys.com.
Hi, it's Drew from Illegal Curve here. Selling your home can be stressful, but it wasn't for me. Thanks to my friends at Zappia Group Realty, they made the process so easy. My home sold within 48 hours and with multiple offers. Zappia Group Realty took care of everything with their exquisite customer service and attention to detail. If you want to sell your home for more in less time, get started by talking to Frank and Mauro Zappia of Zappia Group Realty. Online at zappiagroup.com.
Hey, it's Aaron from Bernstein's Deli.
That's right, Ezzy. I'm the guy who makes all your sandwich dreams come true.
So when you think Illegal Curve, what comes to you?
How about juicy chicken schnitzel, grilled salami, fried onions, melted cheddar cheese, and honey mustard on toasted thick-cut city rye bread?
Man, that's like the holy grail of sandwiches.
And so it shall be known as the Illegal Curve Sandwich.
The Illegal Curve Sandwich. Try it today at Bernstein's Deli. Find us at Corridon and Lanark or online at bernsteinsdeli.com.
Hey, Drew.
Ezzy, whoa, what a smile!
Yeah, I got my crowns done at Linden Market Dental Center, and they whiten my teeth.
I see.
They're so bright that every time I smile, they go,
"We have hockey tonight. Do you have a mouth guard to protect those pearly whites?"
I sure do.
Whoa, they even ting through the mouth guard.
Linden Market Dental Center covers all your dental needs, from restorative to cosmetic dentistry, and will fit you with a sports guard for that active lifestyle. 877 Waverly. See lindenmarketdental.com.
So you're a pizza person, you married a wing person, but somehow your kids are salad people. You can't pick your fam, but you can pick your BP meal deal, starting from $18.99 for takeout or delivery at bostonpizza.com.
Just before we wrap the program, welcome back. Ezra Ginsburg, Drew Mindell with you. Reminder, tomorrow night, 8:45 p.m., the post-game show after the Jets and the Arizona Coyotes. The Jets look to wrap up the homestand on a positive note by defeating the bottom-feeding Coyotes, but the Jets have had trouble doing that this year. So do not take anything for granted would be the lesson I think that they should have learned by now, but time will tell if they've learned that lesson. A great appearance, Ezzy, by Craig Button, a great appearance earlier in the first hour by Mike McIntyre. A fun show. We don't need no Minuk, do we?
I can always use Dave M, but yeah, I would expect to see Karel Vejmelka, who obviously shut out the Jets back here. What was that? Was that November or December? That was a long time ago. I'd have to go back and look. It was at least 2.5 or 3 months ago. That was one of the worst games I've ever watched in Jets 2.0 history. But Vejmelka played last night against Calgary. They lost 4-2, but I would expect him to get the start for the Coyotes, and good for Vejmelka. Like, he signed a contract recently. What was it? A couple of years, Drew? It was 2 or 3 year deal, right? So
yeah, goaltender of the future in Carolina for sure.
Arizona, maybe Carolina as well.
Sorry,
but
Arizona,
for a 5th round, draft pick of Nashville, a guy who wasn't getting a lot of time in the NHL with the Preds. He's turned it into a couple years with the Coyotes, and whether he ends up being 1A or 1B or a backup goalie, he certainly has done enough to make a name for himself around the NHL. So I would expect him to play tomorrow night or tomorrow late afternoon, if you want to call that. With the
early
with the
evening is also fine.
Early evening. For me, 5:30 is at night. I realize it's technically the afternoon, but I always find it weird when people say 5:30 in the afternoon.
One thing for sure, and this has been a bugaboo of mine for a while, when Minuk tweets and he schedules his tweets, he always says, the 5 o'clock tweet is, start your dinner hour off right with the latest Jets news or something. And I'm thinking to myself, who eats dinner at 5 o'clock? I mean,
we did. The Ginsburgs, John Ginsburg, my dad, who I love more than anything else in this world, aside from, my kids and my wife, of course.
Yes. Good cover.
My dad always had dinner on the table. It wasn't necessarily like 5 o'clock, but it was, 5:10, 5:15. Really? But we ate early. That's when we ate dinner. I mean, let's see what people have to say in the chat. But I think, the average dinner time is probably closer to 6. But that's what we did, because we had activities, we had sports and everything like that.
Sure,
also a big day in the Ginsburg household today, because it's Ariella, my daughter Ariella. It's her first gymnastics class. So
very good.
Big day. She's really excited for that. It starts in about 15 minutes or so.
I'll let you get going to that, because I look forward to her being able to do a somersault and then you trying to do a somersault and ending up in traction. That should be a fun conversation for all of us. A big thank you to everybody for joining us this morning that was in the chat. Always a raucous time, always a great time in the chat. We remind you, tomorrow night's post-game show right around 8:45 p.m. And there's a lot of people who gather before in the post-game show chat room and watch the game together. So be one of those people. If you're watching the game at home and join the party bright and early, there's going to be a conversation going on there, undoubtedly. A big thank you to all of the sponsors of this show, of the post-game show, and of the website. They make it a possibility. Rumors Restaurant and Comedy Club, Linden Market Dental Center, Zappia Group Realty, Betway, Bernstein's Deli, Tough Duck, Boston Pizza, Seagram's, Rolly's Transfer, and Grid Park. Support these fine businesses because of their continued support of Illegal Curve Hockey. Big thanks to Mike McIntyre. Big thanks to Craig Button. If you missed either of those, there's an immediate replay available on YouTube. The podcast will be up just as soon as we can get that going. In the meantime, subscribe to the YouTube channel, smash the like button, subscribe to the podcast, leave us some feedback. Let us know what you like. Let us know what you dislike. Tell your friends, tell your family. The best place to be on Saturday mornings. And again, after each and every Winnipeg Jets game is the Illegal Curve YouTube channel.
Before we go though, Drew, just wanted to say one thing. Speaking of feedback, we're getting some feedback about, when people eat dinner. A lot of people saying 6 or around 6, after 6. Roni Dollywall, good friend of the show, frequent viewer of the Illegal Curve Hockey show and post-game show. He's saying I eat dinner at 5 o'clock. So there are some people that eat dinner a little bit earlier. Also, Roni Dollywall saying Dave could have broadcasted from his vacation spot. I like that. Roni's not giving Dave any time off. Yeah, you could be somewhere hot, Dave, but get your laptop, get your mic ready, and let's do this. So shout out to Roni for being an early dinner eater.
There you go. I'm glad that you have a brother in arms there, Mr. Ginsburg. In any event, until tomorrow night at 8:45 p.m. for Ezra Ginsburg, I'm your host, Drew Mindell. Thanks for joining us. This has been the Illegal Curve Hockey Show.